and thanks to At Home for joining us this hour. This seemed like kind of an inside baseball thing at the time, but it's starting to look like it may turn out to be important. Late last week, the New York Times refused to issue a correction, and they let it be known that they were saying no when they had been asked for a correction. The thing they refused to correct or retract was this Follow the Money piece that they had just published about the chairman of the Trump for President campaign. According to offshore banking records reviewed by the Times, right up until just before he joined the Trump campaign as its chairman, business entities tied to Paul Manafort appear to have been deeply in debt to business entities tied to two Putin-connected oligarchs. One of them was this aluminum oligarch, Oleg Deripaska, who, according to the AP, once signed Paul Manafort to a $10 million a year contract to promote the interests of Vladimir Putin's government around the world, including in the United States. The other oligarch was the other person to whom Paul Manafort reportedly owed money was a business partner of Dmitry Firtash. Dmitry Firtash was a major backer of the pro-Putin political party in Ukraine that Paul Manafort worked for years. Putin's Russian state-controlled gas company, Gazprom, cooked up one of those oligarch specials for Dmitry Firtash and his business partner, which shoveled billions of dollars to them by letting them take a cut out of every single fart worth of natural gas that Putin and Gazprom sold to Ukraine. These guys then repaid Putin for that multi-billion-dollar favor by funding the pro-Putin political parties and politicians that Putin wanted in power in Ukraine. So it's nice work if you can get it. I'm sorry I said fart. A few days ago, we reported on a dismissed U.S. lawsuit that claimed that one of the ways those guys laundered Putin's money before sending it back to Ukraine to buy Putin a government there was that it was funneled into and out of New York City real estate deals. The showcase deal of that alleged scheme was an $850 million plan to tear down and redo this hotel, the Drake Hotel in New York City. This would have been a mammoth real estate deal if it happened. The people who were reportedly going to be in on it were Dmitry Firtash, the oligarch guy who was in on the gas deal in Ukraine that Putin set up for him, Dmitry Firtash, and Paul Manafort, and a guy who made his career in New York real estate working for Donald Trump's dad. That was the group that was going to remake the Drake Hotel, make it into a Bulgari Tower, in a deal that was worth about $850 million. Now, for a variety of reasons, that huge deal never happened. But the New York Times reported last week that as of December 2015, right before Paul Manafort became chair of the Trump campaign, documents that the Times reviewed showed that business entities related to Paul Manafort owed business entities related to Dmitry Firtash millions of dollars, like nearly $10 million. Now, Paul Manafort, after the Times published that story, Paul Manafort was reportedly upset with that reporting. He wanted a retraction of that reporting, but the Times is standing by its story. And that is starting to seem like it's getting very important, because now there's this. Dmitry Firtash, the oligarch who Manafort was going to do that $850 million Drake Hotel deal with, Dmitry Firtash, has been popping up in U.S. news off and on for a few months now because the U.S. Justice Department has been trying to extradite him to the United States to stand trial. This is a fairly baroque case. It involves an alleged plot to bribe government officials in India to allow him to mine titanium in that country that he would then sell to Boeing for airplane parts. This is a case that's been going on for a while, but now, as of last night, the Justice Department has just made some new filings in the case against Dmitry Firtash, Paul Manafort's old reported business partner. And these new filings from the Justice Department make two new, very serious claims. One, which was first reported by the Associated Press, is the Justice Department allegation that Dmitry Firtash wasn't just trying to pay bribes in India, he was trying to pay bribes in the United States as well. That's the first new claim. The second new claim that the government is making, the one that's rattling around like a ricochet inside a shooting range, is newly reported tonight from NBC News. According to NBC's review of these new court filings from the Justice Department is now alleging that Dmitry Firtash, the major funder of the pro-Putin political party that Paul Manafort worked for, the Putin-connected oligarch to whom Paul Manafort had contested but reportedly very large financial dealings right up until the time he joined the Trump campaign. The Justice Department now says that Dmitry Firtash is not only wanted in the United States, they now say he is a high-ranking figure in the Russian mob. Quote, the Department of Justice has identified a former business associate of ex-Trump campaign manager Paul Manafort as an upper echelon associate of Russian organized crime. Quote, the government says that prosecuting Firtash and his co-defendant in this alleged scheme will disrupt this organized crime group and prevent it from further criminal acts within the United States. Now, this is the stance, as of right now, of the U.S. Justice Department. And this is bad news for oligarch Dmitry Firtash, obviously, right? This is also troubling news for the White House. If the investigation into the Trump campaign and its potential ties to Russia has now taken a turn toward exploring financial connections and business arrangements, right? Well, a direct financial and business and political link between the Trump campaign chair and someone who the U.S. government is now naming as a major figure in Russian organized crime, that is an unsettling thing. At least that must be an unsettling thing for the White House. Now, when it comes to these alleged linkages, Paul Manafort is distancing himself from Dmitry Firtash. He's playing down that Drake Hotel deal that they tried. He's telling NBC News there was no real business relationship between them. He says, quote, there was one occasion where an opportunity was explored, nothing transpired, and no business relationship was ever implemented. Well, the Justice Department is after this guy now. He faces up to 50 years in prison and confiscation of all his many, many, many assets if he's convicted. And because he has all the money in the world, courtesy of the very nice business deals that Putin's Gazprom set him up with, Dmitry Firtash has used some of his gazillion dollars to hire a top-shelf array of the most expensive American lawyers that money can buy, as the U.S. Justice Department tries to extradite him. And so it's going to be a fight. And the fight will be between his very, very high-priced lawyers and the criminal division of the U.S. Justice Department. And the criminal division of the U.S. Justice Department, until now in this administration, has been run by an acting director of that division, who's left over from the Obama administration and left over from the George W. Bush administration before that, career person. But now the Trump administration has picked somebody new for that job. Running the criminal division of the Justice Department is a huge deal. It is a huge and important job. The Trump administration's pick for that job is Brian Benczkowski. Now, thanks to reporting this week in the New York Times and what came out in his confirmation hearing yesterday, we now know that Brian Benczkowski, after he left the Trump transition, he went to work representing a Russian bank called Alfa Bank. Alfa Bank is linked very closely with Vladimir Putin. Alfa Bank featured prominently in a controversy last year concerning unexplained electronic communications during the presidential campaign between computer servers connected to Alfa Bank and computer servers connected to the Trump organization. Well, we learned at Benczkowski's hearing this week that at the time that his time working for Alfa Bank isn't some like long-standing relationship that's vestigial and he now has to explain it going back years. He started working for Alfa Bank this year. After all that controversy about Alfa Bank and the Trump organization during the campaign. He started working for Alfa Bank after he left the Trump transition earlier this year. We also learned that he was still working for Alfa Bank when the Trump administration asked him to take this very high-level job at the Justice Department. And we learned that if he is confirmed to run the criminal division at the Justice Department, he said he will recuse himself from matters involving his client, Alfa Bank, directly, but he will not say if he'll recuse himself from any investigations any prosecutions related to any ties between Russia and the Trump campaign. In April, he found out he was up for this job of leading the criminal division at the Justice Department. He found out that in April. He stayed on representing this Russian bank until June, until the day he was formally nominated. Head of the criminal division at Justice is a really big freaking deal. For example, that's the job that Robert Mueller used to have before he was FBI director. Is there really no one available for that criminal division job who did not represent a giant Putin-aligned Russian bank until last month? Especially given how many existing Justice Department prosecutions the Trump-Russia investigation is now apparently picking up like iron filings clinging onto a magnet. There's a lot going on right now. Just tonight on this show, we've got 3 different experts lined up for this show, all here live to talk about this civil rights and military readiness bomb that the president just threw on transgender service members. We've also got Senator Amy Klobuchar here tonight live to talk us through what the Republicans are doing on health care tonight as they continue to try to strip health insurance from, in their new bill, the newest estimate is 16 million Americans. But as we're approaching all that stuff that's going on in the news tonight, it is worth appreciating why some of this may be happening, at least in terms of stuff coming from the White House. It's worth appreciating how much the president's back is up against a wall on everything right now because of this existential scandal that is getting worse and worse for him, not better, and getting closer and closer to him in terms of what matters the most to him. This week, we have learned that his daughter, Ivanka, now has just hired a top-tier defense lawyer. This week, his daughter's husband, the president's son-in-law and senior advisor, just gave 2 days of testimony and interviews to the intelligence committees in the House and the Senate. This week, his campaign chairman, Paul Manafort, briefly stared down his first subpoena on the Russia issue and then slipped in behind closed doors quietly to start talking to the Senate Intelligence Committee about the meeting he attended on behalf of the Trump campaign last summer with Kremlin emissaries who were promising dirt on Hillary Clinton that was overtly sourced to the Russian government. He reportedly handed over his notes from that meeting that he took contemporaneously. That's all happened this week so far, and it's only Wednesday. And tonight's the night we're learning that his former the Trump campaign chairman's former business associate is now being named by the Justice Department as a major figure in the Russian mob. This week, the president's eldest son, his namesake, also started working out the terms of his own testimony to the investigating committees. Among the documents Donald Trump Jr. has been told to retain are any communications he had with the Alfa Bank, that Putin-connected bank allegedly linked to the Trump organization during the campaign and definitely linked to the new guy Trump wants to put in charge of all criminal matters at the Department of Justice. In addition to his daughter Ivanka's new lawyer on Russia matters, Donald Trump Jr. also this week reportedly retained at least 1 new lawyer, in addition to the one he got earlier this month, whose fees he has already started charging to the Trump re-election campaign. That's what your Make America Great Again hats are buying, you guys. Those hats are buying Donald Trump Jr.'s legal defense fees in the Russia scandal. And so the investigation into the Russia issue right now is getting very close to home for the president. Is that bothering him? I don't know how to tell. Is that affecting his sense of risk and reward when it comes to drastic actions that he could take as president of the United States? What do you think? I mean, this is a president who has already seen the resignation or the firing of the White House communications director, the White House spokesman, the national security advisor, the deputy national security advisor, a different deputy national security advisor, the ethics chief for the government, the acting attorney general, the deputy White House chief of staff, the vice president's chief of staff, and the FBI director. The Washington Post just reported a few minutes ago that on top of all that, the current White House chief of staff, Reince Priebus, is now fighting to keep that job, in part by promising that he could raise a lot of money from Republican donors for the legal defense funds of various Trump campaign and White House officials. Quote, Priebus is fighting to maintain his influence with the president. The former Republican Party chairman has privately touted his ability to raise money from wealthy donors, suggesting he could bring in funds to a legal defense fund. If that is the thread that the chief of staff, the White House chief of staff, is hanging by as of tonight, presumably we can put White House chief of staff, at least get ready to put him on that list as well. But, I mean, despite all that already, the president continues to go for it, even more aggressively and even closer to the man who's running the Russia investigation. I mean, even with all those people gone, now he has taken to maligning and threatening the current head of the FBI, the acting FBI director, and the deputy attorney general who's overseeing the Trump-Russia investigation by the special counsel. And, of course, he is maligning and threatening his attorney general on a more than daily basis now as well. Now, there is a problem, though, for him with the attacks that he's been launching against his own attorney general. The problem for him politically is that him turning against Jeff Sessions, the attorney general, however helpful that might be, if he wants to ultimately train his sights on Bob Mueller, the special counsel in that Russia investigation. If Trump has to chew up and spit out Jeff Sessions in order to get at Mueller, well, the far-right social conservative edge of his base is gonna hate that, because they love Jeff Sessions, right? And so how do you solve that problem where you really need to get rid of Jeff Sessions if you want to get at shutting down the Russia investigation, but your far-right social conservative base really loves Jeff Sessions? How do you thread that needle? Well, you could try a whole new round of vituperative anti-immigrant rhetoric that borders on violent. You could also try a brand new out-of-the-blue culture war civil rights disaster that you launched preemptively and without warning. Politico tonight is calling it a snap decision. A snap decision. Take a wild swing, Mr. President. See what you hit. After enjoying facile, vapid Beltway reporting during the campaign that suggested that maybe he'd be awesome on LGBT issues, the president today announced on Twitter, but apparently didn't technically issue an order and didn't warn the Pentagon ahead of time. But he nevertheless proclaimed on Twitter that he is now banning transgender troops from serving in the armed services. There are thousands of transgender troops serving openly in the armed services already. Honestly, it is not at all clear to me that the president knew that when he made these announcements this morning on Twitter. It's also not clear that the Pentagon is going to do what he said on Twitter, because nobody understands what he's talking about, what the rationale is for this change, or even what the change should be. So it makes no sense. It is designed to hurt currently serving active duty service members and the military itself. But the president appears to be betting that if, in his ongoing wave of panic, he feels like he needs to oust his hardline conservative attorney general without his hardline conservative base being too mad at him about it, the president appears to be calculating that maybe this kind of a wild punch will make them happy no matter what else damage, no matter what other damage it does to the country. That appears to be the calculation here, that no matter what damage this does, maybe it will make the kind of people who are mad at him about Jeff Sessions not so mad at him about Jeff Sessions anymore. That is our best guess at what he has calculated here, but we will help him do that math. Straight ahead. Stay with us.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me, or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.